Welcome to part 1. Become Superman in your marriage. The series, this version is emotional needs. Now don't run. I know it's not your kryptonite. Don't trip. This is part 1. Enjoy and know that the Q Dog loves you. Go get it. In this episode of Man vs. Marriage, emotional needs. What the heck does that look like? I'm a freaking guy. What do I know about emotions? Whew, stay tuned.
Podcast.
How good do you want your life to be?
It's truly about becoming the best version of yourself that's possible.
This is Man vs. Marriage.
Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Man vs. Marriage. I am so glad that you are here. And who am I? Your humble servant, the Q Dog, in the Moran family studio with my lovely wife, Jeannie.
Hey, baby.
Hey, baby. In between episodes there, I went downstairs and had a little powwow with the kiddos, and they are definitely in the mood for some dad time.
Okay.
I don't know how that's relative to emotional needs, but I just figured I'd throw it out there. We have some work to do here, and then it's dad to family time. Booyah! So, in this episode, what are we calling this? In this genre of defining your needs, we have kind of gone down the list to talk about the different need categories. As I grab my papers here, we did a episode on needs and do needs matter in your relationship. We talked about mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, financial aspects of what needs are. And we dove into the love talk when it comes to love language, so you can further define how you're wired and what those needs might be. Then we went into winning in your marriage and loving your wife on purpose, giving me the playbook so I identify what your needs are, what you like, and I do that. Then we went through the love tank. And does your spouse feel fulfilled? And then we got into needs from the physical aspect, and that involved, your health, your fitness, sex, touch, etc. Now, this particular episode, as said in the precursor to the show, is about emotional needs. And usually I'm not at a loss for words, but when Jeannie said we need to do a show based on emotional needs, I kind of thought, yeah, I said the word emotional, so I figured that was covered. And I guess it's not. And I'm sure if I took the time to really dive into it, I would be able to more clearly define what emotional needs are. I know about your emotional intelligence and keeping yourself cool, calm, and collected and not falling apart. But I think from this aspect, because women are very emotional, I'm pretty emotional and I'm a man, and men are more logical in a sense, I think it's important that we do cover the emotional needs to the best of our ability and give you some perspective so that we can ensure that your needs are being met emotionally and that your wife's needs are being met emotionally. Because while we're more logical and physical, your wife, if she's fulfilled, and I believe Coach Rita taught us this, if her needs are met emotionally, then the yin goes into the yang, and then your needs will be met physically.
Yeah.
They serve a purpose for each other, and you're kind of wired that way. So how do your emotional needs affect your relationship? Do you know hers and yours emotional needs and what they are? And do you know if they're being met? I was very interested in reading, this part of an article from psychologytoday.com. So I want to share with you some of the things that I read, and then we'll get into this discussion about needs. 10 emotional needs of couples. And this is at psychologytoday.com, and I'll see about providing the link in the show notes if you're interested. Or I'm going to read it, so if you're not a reader, you don't have to. So this particular doctor, Dr. Grande, she does psychotherapy, and she works with individuals who struggle with anxiety, depression caused by circumstances in their lives, and they usually work together about 8 to 12 weeks. And I guess what she did was she went in and looked at this study of the 10 emotional needs that we have, and they were basically, I don't know why I say basically, they were derived from a survey that was done by, I believe, another psychologist, and they came up with the 10 most common things throughout everybody's needs, and so they go like this. Now, bear with me. I'm going to read you all 10, and then we'll get into the meat of the show so that we can give you some examples of how this kind of thing has worked for us and where we have been, maybe even go back to where we started. So number 1 is admiration and appreciation, receiving compliments, comments about positive traits, appreciation for work done at home or at the job, and avoidance of criticism. Affection, receiving a hug, love you note, a text greeting, a loving smile, holding hands. Companionship in recreational activity, participating together in a hobby, a sport that requires more than one person, such as tennis, basketball, a game of cards.
Hockey.
Maybe it's going to watch hockey. Maybe it's your spouse is writing a book, and you're there to support in character development and story development. Or maybe you're doing a podcast and your spouse supports you in doing a podcast. Domestic support, which is getting help with cooking, meals, washing dishes, doing laundry, house cleaning, child care, pet care, etc. Family commitment, spending quality time with children, teaching, modeling values, sharing responsibility for the children's well-being. Financial support, having a partner who provides an income, having a certain standard of living, having a partner who stays within an agreed budget. Honesty and openness, which is a willingness to reveal facts about the past and present events, as well as hopes and plans for the future. Intimate conversation, having a discussion to inform or ask questions, discussing topics of mutual interest, willingness to listen to each other, giving and receiving undivided attention. Physical attractiveness, factors such as weight, clothing, hairstyle, and hygiene. And then sexual fulfillment, having sexual closeness. This usually predates the relationship, as distinct from affection. I won't say oddly enough in the sense that I'm surprised that we actually cover every single one of these in our podcast. I would say oddly enough in the sense of I'm slightly surprised that we have no formal training, but through the process of our own marriage, we came up, I would say every one of these is on the list just by a different name.
Yep.
And when you talk about admiration or appreciation, if we go back to the love language, there's words of affirmation is a part of what we've been teaching you. Affection comes with physical touch, companionship, or doing things together.
Quality time.
We've talked about that, and kind of two of these bring that up. And, getting support domestically as far as cooking, cleaning, washing, child care, pet care, etc. Family commitment, that is another one. Spending quality time, teaching, training, modeling. All 10 of these are things that we have brought to you on the podcast. I guess surprisingly, they all involve emotional support.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are physical acts, but all in all, these are emotional needs that need to be met. Now, I don't know No, I know nothing about the doctor who's talking in this article. What I do know is that they wrote the article. It was vetted by another doctor, and this study was done by a doctor by Harley, whoever this
So a
Dr.
bunch of
Harley
people
is.
who have doctorates that are not us came up with this deal. And you and I, who are laymen, came up with our own. And they all kind of coincide.
They do. So we've identified it, and that's helped me identify what emotional needs and support look like. And then I like, me, I don't like to go baseline. I like to go above and beyond. My questions from there would range, are your emotions in a healthy place? Or are you an emotional wreck? Or is your spouse an emotional wreck? I think it's very important to have that awareness and to locate yourself, to locate your spouse. Now, here's something else that's interesting, is if you don't take the time to ask your spouse what their needs are, then it's likely that you are essentially saying, well, these are my emotional needs, so I just assume they're the same for her.
You mean you expect her to think like you? If she thinks like you, then she must have the same emotional needs as you, right?
Yeah, and we did a show called She
Where's
Doesn't
my
Think
buzzer?
Like You.
Where's my buzzer? Wrong.
You're not getting a buzzer
Aw, can I have a foghorn?
until I get a cough button.
Crap.
That, and
I
if
need
we
a
can work
foghorn.
that out.
Can I have a foghorn? I know where I can get one. He'd give it to me, too.
Love.
You know he would.
God gave you a foghorn when he made you, okay?
I'm going to throw something at you.
Yeah, throw some kisses my way.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Kiss this. That's exactly what's coming across this way.
Yeah, Aaron Tippin. So it's likely that if you haven't asked and you're just guessing, which is, we do what we see. We assume the world revolves around us, or we assume that our spouse is like us and our needs have to be their needs. And that's one of those things where, just going from the example of quality time, I figured getting you out of the house was going to work because that's what I would have wanted. And that's, while you were looking for some version of that support, that's not what you were ultimately looking for that would, meet your emotional
I think getting me
need.
out of the house was keeping me out of jail. That was probably the actual...
You make yourself sound so bad. I don't think you were, looking to murder
No,
anybody.
I wasn't looking to murder anybody. I was just on edge all the time. And I was frustrated. I was depressed. I was trying to navigate through everything. And at the time when we started having our kids, being an at-home mom, I took a lot of flack in the beginning. And then slowly it was like, oh, everybody's an at-home mom, but we're all really good at-home moms. We're organized. We have these clubs. We take our kids to these gym classes. We do all these different things. And this was just my perception of what was being brought to me. We had friends who were at-home moms, but they were at-home moms with daycare. Oh, Lord Jesus would never give me somebody else's children while I was raising our own, because I would have killed somebody. I
don't know. It seemed like there were plenty of kids that were brought in and out of our life to help support.
They helped support, but they weren't mine, and they weren't like
We helped
they
support
weren't,
them, is what I'm saying.
But they weren't diaper age. They weren't little. They were older. Where here, can you go feed Kiki this? And I could get rid of 2 kids at one time for at least a good 5 minutes, and that works for me. But daycare and trying to raise other people's little people was not a good place for me to be at that time frame. It just wasn't. But I think Rita kind of pointed out the differences between you and I. Because Quincy if he's frustrated and he's angry, most of the time, if you can get him to laugh, you can break him out of his funk. It's not all the time, but it's a pretty good majority. If somebody could get you to laugh, and I mean a good laugh, you could break it. I don't laugh when I'm angry. And Quincy tries. There's been times where he's tried and he's like, I'm just going to lighten the mood. And it made the mood worse. And Rita pointed out, no. She needs to process and needs space. And you need to just let her fume for a minute until she gets it out of her system. And then Then you can try and joke and play. And thankfully, that's one of those things that he's been kind of teaching the kids too, because the kids think that it's funny to be a smartass when mom's angry. And, let's just push on the nerve. Saha's learning real fast, real fast. Because he thought, you play and you just keep playing. And if the person gets mad, you just keep playing until they're not mad anymore. No. Hi, I'm Jeannie. This does not work for me.
Yeah, I agree. And before realizing this, the way that I would address it was, like a passive aggressive, joking sarcasm, because I like to banter and get it out of my system and then be able to just get the load off my chest, which my brother and I could do really well.
Oh, you should drive me crazy.
But you and I, we were two different peas, in a different pod, or whatever you say there. We were just on two different ends, because I think when there was some, making fun of people at their expense, but when you started arguing, it was going for cutthroat kill.
Yeah.
And while we did the same thing, ours was banter. So we would just try to humiliate and burn each other until maybe it didn't start out serious, but there was a little bit of truth in it. And then if you really hit a nerve, it would get explosive. And then it would, finally come back around to, I feel better. We got to argue that out. But at the same token, those responses that were initiated, between me and my brother and me and some other folks, I was not pleased with how I would respond emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't healthy at all. And it's not productive. And sometimes you can fall back into that habit of just going straight at it and being sarcastic and, passive aggressive or whatever it is. But it did not meet the need that you were looking for. So if I take that approach, it's a self-serving approach, because it'll make me feel better until it's all said and done. And then seeing that you're mad or upset or crying or cussing or whatever the case is, it does not support you emotionally. So what we want to do is kind of give you some examples and then some key factors on what you can do to support your wife and how you can garner some support from her emotionally, even though emotions aren't as natural, I think, for us guys. Or, we're human. We're all human beings, so we're emotional creatures by nature. But we, I think guys tend to try to think more out of the logical side of things. And it doesn't mean that women are illogical.
No, I think the difference is we're emotional because we're nurturers. And to be a nurturer, you have to tap into your emotions, because you have to give of yourself in that moment. You have to meet the emotional need to nurture it. I think, though, I don't know, because you are an emotional person, whereas in the beginning, I locked down my emotions. I shut down a lot. So I internalized a lot of things, trying to avoid being hurt, because that's how our arguments went. In the beginning, it was like, all right, I'll take a shot at you, you take a shot at me, and, whoever strikes blood first wins. And it took us learning not to do that. But in the same token, because of that, I learned to lock stuff away, because I'm not going to give you ammunition. There's no point. If I give you ammunition, you're going to win, and I don't want you to win. But,
well, I was very subjective about the things I would say to you. I'm sure there were times where it would come to a head, but I wasn't going to try to say things that would destroy you.
No, but what I come from, that's what I learned. You find the weak point and you annihilate the person based on that weak point.
Yeah.
And so I learned to start shutting it down. And when we had so many things going on, I'm not going to burden you with what I've got going on, because you're going through the same thing. So just adding to it, there's no point, because I'm just going to make it worse. We were in a pretty jacked up headspace in the beginning. And it took Rita unraveling, I'm not a burden to you. You're not a burden to me. We need to discuss these things, teaching us to do emotional check-ins, because when a trauma hits or a situation hits, we just got used to, let's just get through it. And once we got through it, okay, we're moving on. I don't even want to look at it again. I don't want to think about it. I just want to move past it. But we never stopped to look at the emotional damage that it did, or the scarring that it left behind. We just kind of let the wound stay open and just kept right on trucking. And it taught us to not recognize the other person's breaking point, or to not recognize, when we were talking about this show, I gave the example, if you came home from work and you had just had a really hard, stressful, crappy day, and for whatever reason, you were just at your max capacity, and you got to the house, and as soon as you got home, I'm like, okay, this one did this, this one did this, this one did this. You need to handle this, and I need this fixed. I mean, I just offloaded because, oh my God, there's another adult. Here you go. You can have it all. I'm off. I need a breather. Not realizing you needed a breather. You needed to just come home and let the kids love on you and get work out of your system, so that you could switch from work Quincy to dad Quincy to husband Quincy. I didn't know that. I was just like, you're home, dude. You're up. I'm out. And all I did was add to your stress and your frustration. So all of these things that you were already feeling inadequate or frustrated with, or, kicked in the teeth for, I just handed you a whole nother laundry list of the exact same thing in the place that's supposed to be your safe haven and, your soft place. I didn't know this. So instead of making the situation better and making it so that I could, let the kids love on you and I could love on you, and we could meet some of your needs and affirm you in who you were and to us. Because when you come home, it should be daddy's home.
Yeah.
And everybody, and they did. They used to get excited, but as soon as I started dropping the bombs on them, everybody's like, oh, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah, they're going to take off because they know.
They know daddy's coming
You
in
were
with a
naughty?
hammer.
Come to daddy.
But, it's like not realizing you needed to just come into the environment and be able to be you, slough off all this other stuff that was tossed at you that doesn't matter. Once you cross the threshold, that stuff stays outside. It needs to stay outside. And I could have built you up better. We could have let the kids love on you. I could have loved on you. We could have changed that process, which we did over time. Once Rita kind of brought it out, it was like, ooh, I'm sorry, I was kind of a douche. That sucks. But it would have opened up conversation to say, okay, babe, we've got some things we need to talk about. This happened, this happened, this happened. I don't know how to fix this problem. It would have just made it a lot easier to open the conversation rather than, here, I'm out.
Yeah, and you had just had all you could take.
Yeah,
And
I was at my max
you
capacity.
needed your emotional support, and part of that was probably just offloading all the bad things that had happened. But there was a great compromise where I would come home, make sure that you got your kiss. I hug and kiss the kids, and then I go get at least 10 or 15 minutes just to decompress from work.
Yeah.
Then come out and say, okay, now you go to the bathroom, get your bath, or we would have supper, and then you go get your bath, and you'd get some dedicated time to yourself, which you needed. Little did I know, that was us emotionally supporting one another.
Mm-hmm.
And then, once those things were done, then I would definitely get time with the family, and the family would build me up. Now, there was time to adjudicate the laws that were broken. But when we came up with that, with Coach Rita, it made a heck of a difference in our daily routine, and also us supporting one another emotionally.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that you discover that. I don't know why I keep saying I think. In my opinion, it's important that you identify those areas in your life where you are emotionally and what type of support you need. All right, that's where we're going to stop today. Be sure to tune in for part 2 of this episode, where we finish you out and teach you all that you need to know, or at least some of it, when it comes to emotional needs and your wife. Come on back for episode 2. We'll see you soon. The cute dog is out.
The podcast. How good do you want your life to be?
You gotta live on purpose, for a purpose.
It's truly about becoming the best version of yourself that's possible. This is Man vs. Marriage, the podcast.